February 2019. Morning haze settled over downtown Los Angeles, softening the skyline in a way that made time feel elastic. Inside a climate-controlled evidence room on North Mission Road, retired LAPD Detective Cyrus Vance stood over a cardboard archive box marked in fading ink. Cold Case 1969, Caldwell, Anna. He'd opened hundreds of cold files before, but this one was different. He had grown up hearing whispers about it. The girl who walked out of a university library and vanished before reaching the bus stop. 50 years of silence, 50 years of questions no one answered. He slid on a pair of nitrile gloves and lifted the first folder. Dust rose like breath from the past. The file contained a few black and white photographs, a typed report, and one newspaper clipping yellowed with age. Teen vanishes near USC campus. The reporter's name was smudged away by time, but the words beneath still burned. Last seen carrying books. No signs of struggle. Case remains unsolved. Vance took a slow breath. He'd seen brutality. But what haunted him were the disappearances, the ones that left no body, no answers, no closure. He turned to the case summary. The date hit him first. October 15, 1969. The name beneath, Anna Caldwell, female, age 16. A gifted student with early admission access to the USC Doheny Library. The report noted she left the building at 9:45 p.m. Witness, Walter Kincaid, night guard. His statement? She looked like she was running from time itself. That line stayed with Vance long after he read it. The next page listed recovered evidence. One canvas tote bag, a handful of loose papers stamped USC Library archive, and a single detail that would later tie everything together. Notes found scattered near alley, 2 blocks from campus. The rest was procedural clutter, phone records, interviews, fingerprints, a hand-drawn map of Anna's route home. Everything led nowhere. He closed the folder and looked at the label again. Cold case. But the file wasn't cold. It pulsed. By 1969, Los Angeles was a city teetering between idealism and fear. The summer of love had decayed into something brittle. Riots, drugs, the echo of the Manson murders still vibrating through every headline. The Caldwell family lived in the Fairfax district, a quiet pocket of working-class normalcy. Elias Caldwell was a carpenter, Beatrice a legal secretary. Their daughter Anna was their only child, a straight-A student, driven, cautious, polite to everyone. That's why her disappearance made no sense. In the weeks before she vanished, she had told her best friend that a USC professor had been giving her trouble. Too intense, too interested, asking about my research like I'm part of hers. The police at the time dismissed it. Back then, professors weren't suspects. Cyrus Vance stared at the folder as if the paper might speak. He had read enough cold cases to recognize when a story didn't end. It just went silent. He reached for his notebook and wrote 4 words. Find the professor's name. Then he underlined it twice. This wasn't curiosity. It was instinct. The kind that wakes you up at night and doesn't let you go until you find what's missing. He didn't know it yet, but that single decision to open one forgotten file would expose a chain of murders hidden in plain sight for over half a century. What if your city hid a monster in plain view for 50 years? What if every missing student wasn't coincidence but research? And what if the answers were buried not in the streets, but in the lecture halls? If you're listening to this and already feel a knot forming in your stomach, you're not alone. Some stories stay buried because they should. This isn't one of them. If this case feels too close to home already, comment where you're listening from. Because these are the stories others are too afraid to tell. Most people miss warnings. Don't be one. Subscribe now. Not subscribing? Tell us why in the comments below. Los Angeles, 1969. A city caught between revolution and fear. Music from protests clashes with sirens in the distance. The headlines speak of peace, but the streets whisper of chaos. For most, it's a decade of rebellion. For 16-year-old Anna Caldwell, it's a decade of purpose. She wasn't like the others her age. While her classmates chased distractions, Anna chased knowledge. Every teacher she met saw the same thing, a mind too sharp to waste. Her parents, Elias and Beatrice Caldwell, built their lives around her dreams. They weren't wealthy, but their home was full of warmth, laughter, and the sound of typewriter keys as Anna prepared her school projects. She wanted to attend a university no one from her neighborhood had ever reached, and she was on her way. That fall, her school arranged for her to use the University of Southern California Library, a rare privilege for someone her age. She was proud of it, maybe even a little nervous, but she was ready. October 15, 1969. That was the last morning the Caldwells saw their daughter alive. Beatrice packed her dinner, kissed her forehead, and told her to be careful. Elias walked her to the bus stop, reminding her to call home before dark. Anna smiled, promised she would, and stepped into the world for what should have been just another evening of studying. At the library, she spent hours surrounded by stacks of books. Witnesses remembered her, polite, focused, carrying a canvas tote filled with notes. As the night deepened, a light rain began to fall outside. The guard on duty, Walter Kincaid, would later tell investigators she seemed to be in a hurry when she left, walking fast, head down, clutching her bag like it held something important. She never reached the bus stop. Somewhere between the library doors and the waiting curb, she vanished. The next morning, her books were found in a narrow alley 2 blocks away. Her tote was torn open, papers soaked by the rain. There were no footprints, no broken glass, no calls for help recorded that night. Just silence. Silence that stretched into days, then months. Her parents searched every street, begged for attention, pleaded with police, but the answers never came. Officers told them she'd probably run away, another teenager chasing freedom. Her father didn't believe that for a second. Elias Caldwell would stand in the doorway of her room for hours, staring at her desk, untouched, waiting for the sound of her pencil scratching across paper. That sound never came again. As the weeks passed, the story faded. Los Angeles had no shortage of tragedy in 1969. The Manson murders dominated headlines, protests filled campuses, and missing girls became just another line in the news. But for Elias and Beatrice, time stopped the night Anna didn't come home. The family's phone, once filled with friends' calls, stayed silent. Every ring made Beatrice flinch. Every knock on the door made Elias hope, only for that hope to collapse when it was never her. He kept a small notebook beside the kitchen table, listing the names of anyone who might know something: classmates, librarians, bus drivers. Each lead ended the same way: nowhere. The detectives had no direction, no urgency. The case was filed, stored, and forgotten, until one conversation resurfaced. One detail Elias hadn't realized was important. A few weeks before Anna vanished, he'd overheard her speaking to her friend Astrid. Anna had been upset. She said a university professor had been giving her trouble, someone who controlled her access to historical records. She described this professor as intense, with a strange fascination for her project topic: post-war sociological movements. Anna said she felt uneasy, but brushed it off. She wanted to finish her work. That detail was logged in a report, but dismissed as unimportant. No one looked deeper. No one asked who that professor was. For decades, the file stayed closed, and the Caldwells aged under the weight of unanswered questions. Elias eventually stopped calling the police station. Beatrice stopped setting an extra plate at dinner. They both learned the cruel rhythm of waiting for something that would never come. The world moved forward without Anna, but her absence stayed, quiet, cold, unforgotten. Every year, Elias would visit the place where her notes had been found. He'd stand in that alley, holding a photograph of her smiling face, asking the same question into the wind: "Who took you?" He never got an answer, until 50 years later, when that same box was reopened, the same photo, the same silence. But this time, someone was listening. She left behind only her notes, but something written in them would expose her killer 50 years later. Her name on paper was Linda Grave. In class rosters and faculty memos, it appeared beside phrases like accelerated seminar and restricted access. To students, she was a riddle. To colleagues, a necessary asset. Brilliant, disciplined, untouchable. She was in her early 30s then, carrying herself with the calm of someone who never needed to raise her voice. Not beautiful in a soft way, but striking. Sharp lines, precise movements, attention that cut like glass. When she walked into a room, conversations tightened. When she asked a question, people answered more carefully than they meant to. Her field was the psychology of social extremism. She lectured on how movements recruit, how crowds obey, how ordinary people surrender judgment when they want to belong. But her lectures did more than inform. They pressed. Students left her classes wired with a strange mix of inspiration and dread, the sense that they had been measured and sorted. Faculty respected the output. Papers that drew nationwide interest. Panels where she spoke in exact terms, never wasting a word. Those who admired her called it clarity. Those who feared her called it control. She preferred prodigies, the ones who finished assignments early, who chased sources others couldn't get, who stayed late in the archive stacks until the lights flickered. She met them in offices with closed doors. She promised guidance. She offered access. She set the terms. Her questions were clinical, her compliments precise. She asked about pressure points, parents, grades, ambition, shame. She kept notes after every meeting, not about ideas but about the person across from her. Posture, eye contact, hesitations, breaths held too long. In the late nights, she lingered in the archival wing. Sign-in logs placed her there again and again on the very evenings when young visitors from nearby schools were granted study access. No one questioned it. This was a scholar doing work. Who would doubt a person with that many citations attached to their name? Years later, when the old logs were cross-checked, a pattern surfaced. Quiet, consistent, chilling in its neatness, grave in the stacks when Anna was there. The timing wasn't random. It was habit. She didn't study human behavior. She tested its limits. With students, she used warmth like a tool. Never too much, always measured. A nod here, a sentence there, an offer to review a draft others wouldn't glance at. She learned which praise opened a door and which silence kept someone hungry for more. Her office shelves held texts on conformity, recruitment, obedience under pressure. But the real curriculum walked in and sat across from her one by one. She guided with stories of past protégés who went far, who handled rigorous standards, who didn't flinch when work demanded sacrifice. That word, sacrifice, passed her lips often, not in a dramatic tone. It sounded ordinary when she said it, like a cost printed at the bottom of a receipt. She published a paper that year about thresholds, the exact points at which a person will accept direction from an authority figure. Her conclusion: attachment accelerates compliance. If the source of pressure also controls opportunities, resistance drops. She wrote it cleanly, as if describing weather. Students who met with her alone tended to return. They left with special reading lists, quiet favors, invitations to observe her interviews for research subjects tied to campus groups. Some said her attention felt like sunlight after a winter of being ignored. Others said it felt like standing too close to a fire. The archive log said even more. On nights when Anna Caldwell signed in, the same signature appeared: L. Grave. A few lines apart. Different handwriting, same clock. A staffer remembered a woman with severe glasses checking out materials from restricted stacks on those evenings. Calm voice, polite smile that never reached the eyes. No one forgot to return things to her on time. In faculty lounges, colleagues debated whether her research pressed ethical lines. None of them said it out loud in a meeting. No one volunteers to be the person who challenges results that the department cites in grant proposals. To the outside world, she was a success story in an era obsessed with intellect. Inside closed rooms, she was a presence that shaped the air. Students tried harder around her. They also made mistakes they wouldn't have made for anyone else. Those mistakes opened doors she was waiting to walk through. Her private writing, the parts never sent to journals, spoke in a colder register. She wrote about detachment as a requirement, not a virtue. She wrote that observation is corrupted by sympathy. She wrote that distance is the only path to clean data. The phrase that stood out, emotional detachment in pure observation, not a suggestion, a rule. In these pages, students weren't students, they were subjects. She described posture, compliance time, recovery after correction. She tracked how long it took for a person to obey when told their future depended on cooperation. She listed which rewards worked best: promised access, private recognition, proximity to influence. None of this reached the ethics board. None of it needed to, not when the parts she showed the world were neat, footnoted, and applauded. A graduate assistant remembered a strange instruction from that period. Leave the door unlocked on archive nights. I may need to escort a student to a separate room for an interview. The assistant didn't ask questions. In corridors like these, questions have a way of shortening contracts. That fall, library security noted an increase in late-night faculty visits to the stacks. Most left quickly. One stayed past closing again and again. Her sign-out lasted minutes longer than policy allowed, but no one enforced policy with someone who wrote the campus's most cited paper that year. The more you read her private pages, the clearer the picture becomes. She believed curiosity grants permission. If you are the one who wants to know, you earn the right to decide how to know it. People were variables. Young, eager people were the most responsive variables of all. It is easy to miss a predator who never raises a voice. It is easier when that person quotes theory with the calm of a surgeon and wears a badge stamped with the seal of a major university. There is a kind of violence that doesn't look like violence until you count the silence it leaves behind. Her work did not shout. It removed. Returned to those stacks for a moment. Rows of books that could swallow a person whole. The soft drone of a building after hours. A clock that doesn't know how to hurry. On one side of the aisle, Anna Caldwell copies notes, cross-checks sources, tries to finish a paragraph before the last bus. On the other side, a woman with a leather notebook pretends to browse. She is not browsing. She watches how Anna holds her pen. She watches how Anna reacts when she's addressed by title instead of name. She watches whether Anna thanks her for small permissions, the subtle proof that authority has taken root. The sign-in sheet will later show both names. The gap between them will tighten in the weeks before October 15th. To everyone else, this is nothing. To a patient hunter, this is timing. Colleagues will later swear that Linda Grave never raised her voice, never lost her temper, never left a mess. They will call her composed. They will say she wore calm like armor. They will struggle to accept that the calm itself was the weapon. She didn't study human behavior. She tested its limits. That is not an accusation made in rage. It is a line pulled from the evidence, the logs, the memos, the office calendars that showed student interviews booked without names, just initials. Hold that image in your mind. A girl chasing a future through primary sources. A professor taking notes on the girl, not the book. Two paths running close enough to touch. The university rewarded output. The department prized results. Students believed access meant opportunity. They never learned that access, in the wrong hands, is a leash. Somewhere in those aisles, a decision took shape. Not a sudden lightning strike, but a slow tightening. A conclusion drawn by someone who believed people are data, and data can be controlled. If you've ever trusted a gatekeeper because everyone else did, you know how easy it is to miss the danger in a smile. Subscribe before the next twist catches you off guard, because this story is just warming up. Her glasses reflect the reading lamps. Her gaze doesn't move. Across the aisle, Anna turns a page. The watcher does not blink. His name is Cyrus Vance. Cold case specialist. Calm voice. Restless mind. He doesn't chase headlines, he hunts loose ends. Cyrus learned early that time doesn't kill truth. It just buries it under routine. He prefers the cases no one wants, The folders with missing pages, the photos with dates smudged out, the reports that begin strong and fade into silence. He speaks 3 languages: procedure, pattern, and data. Older detectives say he stares too long at screens. He says the screen is where ghosts learn to talk. On paper, he's exactly what a forgotten case needs: skilled with digital archives, comfortable building scripts that compare files across decades, patient enough to read every note and every margin. Off paper, he carries the kind of anger that never dissolves into noise. The anger of seeing families treated like footnotes. The anger of watching a city move on without the people it lost. He doesn't dress like a hero. He wears the same jacket, the same watch that beeps at the top of the hour, and a frown that appears whenever a timeline doesn't line up. He pulls a storage request for a box few have touched since the last century. The label is dull, the ink faded, but the name lands with weight. Caldwell, Anna, 1969. He opens it. He reads everything. Twice. He studies the original reports, the copies, the recopies, the strange gaps where a paragraph should be and isn't. A sticky note curls at the edge of an interview summary. 4 words, cramped handwriting, half an afterthought. Stern professor at USC. He circles the words. He circles them again. Something in him steadies. Something in him decides this case is no longer a file. It's a promise. Cyrus lists out what he knows. Anna was 16. She had library access at USC. Her notes were found near an alley 2 blocks away. The guard remembered her leaving in a hurry. The police called it a runaway. And then there's that note. Stern professor at USC. No name, no department, no follow-up. He has seen this pattern before. A small detail that would have changed everything if someone had cared enough to pull the thread. So he pulls. He starts with faculty rosters from 1968-1970. He builds a spreadsheet of names, departments, office locations, and known research topics. He overlays library access logs, the old sign-in books that were scanned years ago and left to rot in a corner of the server. He pulls student access records showing which high schoolers had special permission to use the archives that fall. He runs a simple query. Dates Anna signed in. Names of faculty who signed in within 2 hours of her time window. Rank by frequency. A short list populates. Most names appear once. One name appears repeatedly. He reads it out loud to an empty room, as if saying it will prove he's not imagining the pattern. Linda Grave. He checks again. Same result. Different night. Same overlap. He moves to research topics. Pulls journal articles from that era. Filters for work on social behavior, group control, recruitment methods. Prints the abstracts. Underlines the phrases that echo each other across different publications. One paper repeats a theme about attachment and compliance. Another coolly discusses detachment during observation. He pictures a girl copying notes under library lamps while someone nearby watches. Not the books, but the hands turning the pages. Every line he draws leads to one name. But could she still be alive? Cyrus widens the scope. If Anna was targeted, she may not have been the only one. He creates a time grid from 1969 to 1973. He populates it with missing student reports from around Los Angeles County, then adds campus incident logs, then any news notices about vanished teens whose stories never made it past a single column. He builds an AI matcher that flags overlaps in location radius, dates within the same month as specific faculty archive visits, project topics related to social movements, age range, 16-19, prior contact with university departments. Matches begin to blink on his monitor. Not many, enough to stay up all night. He filters for any case that noted interaction with a university mentor or a faculty advisor. The pool narrows again. He overlays the USC sociology faculty calendar from the period and cross-checks with library archival logs. A pattern tightens. Certain nights, certain stacks, certain names, always within steps of where ambitious young students were working late. He checks UCLA just to be sure. A few blips appear there too. Visiting lectures, guest panels, book talks. One faculty name keeps repeating in sign-ins, in paper citations, in conference programs shared across campuses. Linda Grave. He stares at the cluster of red markers on the map he's built. They're not spread evenly. They form a path. Campus access halls, archives, late exits toward bus routes. Ever felt obsessed with a mystery no one else cared about? He asks the empty room, and the question lands back on his screen like a dare. If you think some secrets deserve to be dug up, hit that subscribe button right now. He returns to the roster, the logs, the abstracts. If he's wrong, the map dissolves into coincidence. If he's right, a trusted figure groomed an entire city to look away. Cyrus prints everything. The sign-in pages showing Anna Caldwell and L. Grave on the same nights. The outlines of Grave's talks on group obedience. The archived memo noting her interviews with young subjects close to campus. The old sticky note with the words that started this chain. Stern professor at USC. He pulls a stack of missing persons notices from 1969 through 1973. Two names flare, Orion Beckett and Sylvie Thorne. Both young, both talented, both connected to projects that would have intersected with Grave's research interests. He adds their last known movements to the map. The cluster tightens again, bright as an accusation. Next, he runs genealogical queries on unidentified remains from that era, linked to the region. He filters by age, by dental notes, by unique injuries noted in the reports. One case returns enough data to hold his attention. A young woman found along a hillside road in late 1969, logged without a name and placed among the forgotten. He digs up the case ID. He requests the DNA reference files. He marks a line from Anna's box to a body tag that never had a face attached to it. He studies a faculty portrait of Linda Grave from 1969. Her expression offers nothing. No hint of empathy. No hint of doubt. Just eyes that measure. Every line he draws leads to one name. Every file he opens points to the same gatekeeper. He whispers it again, not for drama, but to mark the moment when suspicion becomes focus. Linda Grave. The database response comes through at 2:17 a.m. A single file number flashes across Detective Cyrus Vance's screen. Case ID 69-1147, Jane Doe 59. A woman found in November 1969, off Mulholland Drive. Age range, 16 to 18. Condition, unrecognizable. No identification, no follow-up. Closed without conclusion. For 50 years, she was a statistic in a forgotten cabinet. Now she's a question with an answer that might hurt. Cyrus retrieves the digital scan of the report. The description matches too many of the details he's been tracking. Time frame, distance from USC, cause of death, multiple stab wounds. He scrolls further and freezes. Under distinguishing features, there's an entry. Old scar, left wrist, small, healed. His pulse kicks. In Anna Caldwell's school medical record, there's a note written by her nurse. Healed injury, left wrist, self-inflicted during accident with glass. The pieces begin to align. He requests the DNA evidence stored with the case. The sample logged decades ago, degraded but still preserved under layers of plastic and tape. He contacts the National Genetic Archive, asks for a priority test against the Caldwell family DNA sample collected years earlier during a separate review. Then he waits. Days pass. He doesn't sleep much. He rechecks every link, every note, every photo. When the results come in, the message is short. Positive identification. Jane Doe 59 confirmed as Anna Caldwell. The words look too clean for what they mean. A missing girl from 1969 has finally been found. 50 years too late. Cyrus leans back in his chair. He stares at the file and thinks of a father who never stopped visiting an empty grave. He thinks of a mother who stopped setting a dinner plate for the daughter who never came home. He thinks of the teenage girl who walked into a library one night and disappeared into a scholar's experiment. He prints the confirmation. He underlines the date. He doesn't cry. He just whispers what he's been waiting to say since the first day he touched her file. Welcome home, Anna. The identification changes everything. A dead girl now has a name, and a name demands accountability. Cyrus runs the DNA sample again, this time not against victims, but against potential suspects. He uses the investigative genetic genealogy network, connecting it to public ancestry databases. The search grows like roots, branching through generations of people who uploaded their DNA without realizing what it might uncover. The first results mean nothing. Distant relatives scattered across the country. Then, a faint connection appears. A cousin match living in Oregon, listed as related to a family name from Pasadena. That name leads to an obituary. The deceased? Dr. Linda Grave, former USC professor of sociology, died of natural causes at 78. Cyrus pauses. He scrolls back to check. The birth year matches the one from the 1960s staff directory. Her full name in university archives, Eleanor Voss, later Linda Grave. He exhales through his teeth. He's not chasing a ghost, he's chasing a legacy. He obtains a warrant to examine her last known residence, now owned by her nephew, Silas Grave. The house stands in Pasadena's quiet suburbs, white fencing, trimmed lawns, a mailbox still carrying her name. Inside, dust covers everything. The nephew says she kept to herself, left behind boxes of old academic papers, audio reels, journals. Cyrus and his partner start their search in the study. Most of it is harmless. Drafts of articles, typed manuscripts about control and obedience. But one bookshelf catches his eye. Too short to match the others, wedged awkwardly against the wall. He taps it. It echoes hollow. He pries it forward. Behind it is a narrow wooden panel. When he removes the cover, a small compartment reveals itself. A hidden cavity lined with plastic sheeting. Inside, a shoebox, labeled only with a year, 1969. He pulls the lid off and sees a stack of reel-to-reel audio tapes. The first one on top carries a piece of masking tape with handwriting across it. October 16, 1969. Subject final study. Cyrus sits at his desk hours later, the reels arranged in front of him like relics. He threads the first tape onto an old player borrowed from evidence storage. The wheels turn, slow at first, then steady. At first, there's static. Then a voice, clear, controlled, precise. This is Dr. Linda Grave. Entry 412. The subject's emotional resistance has diminished following sustained pressure. Cyrus closes his eyes for a second. He doesn't want to believe what he's hearing, but he knows exactly what it is. The tape continues. She expresses confusion, but compliance has increased. I have documented her physiological responses. She understands the end of the exercise is near. Then another sound cuts through the quiet. Soft breathing, uneven, frightened. A girl's voice, barely audible, trembling. Please, I just want to go home. Cyrus stiffens. The girl's tone carries the raw fear of someone who has realized that pleading won't save her. Then Linda's voice again. Closure is essential for academic integrity. Observation must end at its natural point. A muffled cry, then scraping, then silence. The tape whirs until it clicks off. Cyrus sits still. The air feels heavier than any crime scene he's ever walked into. He replays it. Same voice, same sequence. He forwards to the end. There's one final whisper, as if Grave leaned close to the microphone. I've documented the subject's final moments for the historical record. A necessary end to her inconvenient idealism. His hand trembles, but he keeps listening. He knows that stopping now would feel like betraying the girl who never made it home. He plays another reel. It's shorter, mostly scribbles of research notes, reflections on participant behavior under duress. But one section stands out. Success is proportional to obedience. The more they admire you, the faster they break. Cyrus stops the tape. The machine ticks down to silence. The sound it leaves behind feels louder than the recording. The next morning, Cyrus calls for an official analysis. The voice prints are compared with archived recordings of Professor Linda Graves' lectures from 1969. It's a match, 100%. The voice on the tape belongs to her. The girl's voice is matched next, using old family recordings from the Caldwell's home videos. Another match. Anna Caldwell. It's no longer theory. It's confession. Every department meeting from that era, every conference that praised Graves' pioneering research, all of it was built on recordings of her victims. The data she claimed to collect came from real human suffering, cataloged like laboratory notes. Cyrus listens to the tape one last time before submitting it to evidence. He doesn't turn the volume up or down. He lets it play until the end. There's no music, no warning. Only a faint shuffle of movement, a whisper, a final pause. Then static. He stops the reel. For the first time in years, he feels both victory and nausea in the same breath. He types the final summary into his report. Case closed. Suspect identified through recovered audio and genetic evidence. But he doesn't leave his desk. He stays seated, staring at the words on the screen, because some victories taste like ash. Most people don't know this part, but it changes everything. She thought she was safe because her killer was a scholar. If this happened near you, wouldn't you want to know? Please subscribe. Predators hide in authority. Protect yourself. The truth hits. Linda Graves didn't lose control. She planned control. She documented death as study. For decades, her words were quoted in classrooms as theory. Not one reader knew they were listening to the voice of a murderer. The knock on the door came just after sunrise. A quiet street in Pasadena. No cameras, no neighbors watching from windows, just two detectives and a lifetime of waiting. Linda Graves was 78 years old. Age had dulled her voice, not her confidence. Her hair was white now, cropped close. Her eyes, still sharp, seemed almost bored as the officers entered. When told she was under arrest for the murder of Anna Caldwell, she didn't ask why. She didn't deny it. She simply said, "I was wondering when someone would come." Her words weren't defensive. They were clinical, like she was watching her own capture as part of another experiment. The officers moved through the house, collecting what remained of her records, notebooks, coded references, index cards marked only with numbers. Each page felt like an echo of a voice that had studied life by extinguishing it. As they led her to the car, a reporter shouted from across the street, asking if she had anything to say to the families of her victims. She turned once, looked straight at the camera, and said, "They were part of an experiment, and they understood the cost." Her tone was flat, free of remorse. To her, the word experiment was justification enough. The world saw madness. She saw completion. Cyrus Vance stood behind the camera crews, watching her expression. There was no triumph in his eyes, only a quiet disgust that justice could arrive so late it almost lost its meaning. He knew she would talk, not out of guilt, but out of pride. During the evidence review, a discovery eclipsed everything found before. Inside Graves' study, hidden beneath the same bookshelf where the tapes had been, they uncovered a small, leather-bound logbook. Each page contained a date, initials, and notations written in Graves' narrow, angular handwriting. Two names appeared again and again: Orion Beckett, 1971, Sylvie Thorne, 1973. Orion, 19 years old, political science student at Cal State. Ambitious, defiant, fascinated by revolutionary movements. Graves' notes described him as volatile, ultimately unfit for sustained observation. Termination required for clarity. Sylvie, 17, art student, known for her obsession with abstract interpretation and self-expression. Graves' line beside her name read, "Subjective aesthetic reached saturation. Removal necessary for dataset purity." These weren't random victims. They were patterns, the continuation of the same cold pursuit she began with Anna Caldwell. The police searched a field property linked to Graves' name outside Los Angeles County. Cadaver dogs found traces of disturbed earth. Beneath it, fragments of clothing, teeth, and old glass sample vials, each labeled by year. Reporters called it the research cemetery. Cyrus refused to use the term. To him, it wasn't research. It was methodical cruelty disguised as intellect. When investigators asked why she chose those specific students, Graves' answer was as hollow as it was horrifying. They sought knowledge. I offered it. Their limits defined the study. The statement spread across headlines, screens, and podcasts. For the first time, the academic world confronted the rot beneath its own hierarchy, how easily authority cloaked obsession. In one of her notebooks, they found a line scrawled across the back cover. Control is not taken, it's given. It was the final reminder that Grave never saw herself as a killer. In her mind, she was a teacher documenting reactions, a teacher who never stopped taking notes. The trial began in late 2019. The courtroom overflowed, journalists, former students, surviving family members. For many, it was a confrontation between two centuries, the paranoia of 1969 colliding with the digital clarity of modern forensics. The defense painted Linda Grave as a woman fractured by intellect, a scholar consumed by her own studies, unable to separate analysis from empathy. They used words like dissociation and fixation. They called her a mind trapped in its own machine. The prosecution called her something else, a manipulator who mistook power for discovery. They played the confession tapes. Every person in that room heard the recorded breath of a terrified girl begging to go home. They heard the professor's calm voice cataloging those final moments as necessary observation. Some jurors cried. Others couldn't look at her. Grave herself remained silent, expression blank, hands folded as though she were still lecturing. Cyrus Vance took the stand. He detailed the chain of evidence, from Anna's DNA to the tapes and the logbook. He spoke quietly, almost clinically, the way she used to. But when he described hearing Anna's voice for the first time, his tone cracked. The smallest fracture of emotion in a case built entirely on facts. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. The verdict: guilty on all counts of murder. The sentence: life imprisonment without parole. As the judge read the decision, Graves' eyes didn't move. She turned her head slightly as though observing the crowd, calculating their reactions for one last entry she would never write. She was taken away without resistance, no apology, no tears, no regret. Her final public words were recorded as she passed the press. You can call it murder if you need to. I call it conclusion. Justice came, but half a century too late. Linda Grave died in prison less than a year later. The report listed cardiac failure, though some called it poetic justice. Her personal writings were sealed as evidence, her academic titles revoked, her name erased from every university database. But the damage couldn't be deleted. Her work, once praised, once cited, had already shaped theories that influenced generations of sociologists. Her words still lingered in books that sat on classroom shelves, stripped of context. Cyrus pushed for those citations to be withdrawn. He wanted her legacy dismantled piece by piece, not rewritten, but exposed. Anna Caldwell was reburied in the spring of 2020. The funeral was small, no press, no spectacle. Just a few relatives, a handful of local officers, and Cyrus standing quietly at the back. Elias Caldwell, her father, placed a single photo on the casket. Anna, at 16, holding a book against her chest. He said one sentence that made everyone bow their heads. We buried the truth with her once. We won't do it again. It wasn't revenge. It was release. The case became a symbol, not just of what happened in 1969, but of how easy it is to trust titles, to trust credentials, to believe intelligence can't coexist with cruelty. For the families of Orion Beckett and Sylvie Thorne, closure was still distant. Their remains had yet to be fully identified. But the discovery of the logbook gave them something to hold on to, proof that their names were not lost to time. For Cyrus Vance, the victory felt thin. Justice had come, but the cost was 50 years of silence. He often replayed the same line in his head, the one Grave used to defend herself. They understood the cost. He would whisper back to no one. No, they didn't. You decided it for them. She hid behind knowledge, and we all let her. Subscribe so you never overlook the truth again. If your professor offered you exclusive research access, would you still go? Authority wears many faces. Sometimes it smiles behind a desk. Sometimes it speaks in calm, educated tones that make you believe you're safe. That's the trick of power. It rarely raises its voice. Linda Grave was proof that danger doesn't always shout. Sometimes it lectures. Sometimes it invites you to sit, to learn, to trust. And by the time you realize the lesson isn't knowledge but control, it's too late. For decades, the world praised people like her, minds too sharp to question, names too respected to confront. She wasn't the only one. She was just the one who got caught. The real warning isn't about one professor in 1969. It's about how quickly we surrender our judgment to those who seem certain. How easily we confuse confidence with truth. How often we walk into the dark, trusting someone else to hold the light. We still do it. Different time, different tools, same mistake. Every generation thinks it's immune. Every generation trusts someone it shouldn't. And every generation loses someone because of that faith. Cyrus Vance understood that better than anyone. He knew this case wasn't closure. It was a reminder that the next monster will also wear credentials, and the world will hesitate again. The office is quiet. The case folders sit stacked on a metal desk, edges curling from age. Detective Vance locks the final report on Anna Caldwell into the cabinet. He closes the drawer. Then he turns. Another file waits. Same dust, same faded ink. The label reads, Thorne, Sylvie, 1973. He stares at it for a long moment, knowing exactly what it means. Justice doesn't end. It only pauses between names. He reaches for the file. His hand stops halfway, as if the air itself is asking, "Do you really want to know what's inside?" He answers by opening it. Somewhere a heartbeat slows. Somewhere another story begins. If this case rattled you, subscribe to this channel, because there are more like it waiting in the dark. And if you think justice took too long, comment time below. Let's see how many agree. Cases like this slip past good people. Subscribe. If not, tell us why. We build statues for intellect, not conscience. We celebrate achievement, not accountability. And in that blind praise, we leave gaps wide enough for evil to walk through unnoticed. So tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself, who do you trust and why?